A major mountain range begins at the southern border of the U.S. state of Texas and Mexico and stretches 1,127 kilometers southward through northeastern Mexico. Around midnight, on the eastern side of this mountain range, lies a group of caves. Below these caves, at the base of the mountains, there is a very small and isolated village, inhabited mostly by illiterate and poor farmers. On one night in May 1930, a 14-year-old boy named Sebastián Guerrero, who lived in one of these remote villages, decided to go on a hike to explore the various caves, a habit he had developed over time. There was an old legend that a hidden treasure lay buried inside these caves. It was unclear whether Sebastián truly believed the legend, or if it was simply an excuse to escape his home and enjoy nature on his own. Either way, he left home and began climbing the mountain, heading toward the caves. The entrance to the caves was about 60 meters up the mountainside, with cave mouths varying in size, some very small, others quite large, scattered over vast distances in all directions. As he walked through the pitch-black night without carrying a flashlight, he noticed a light coming from one of the distant cave entrances. He had never seen light coming from the caves before, especially at night, so his curiosity was piqued. He moved closer to investigate. As he approached, he began to hear sounds coming from inside the cave, sounds that resembled either laughter or screaming. He wasn't sure. Maybe there was a party happening inside. But as he got within about 50 meters, he realized the sounds were screams of pain and fear, not joy. With each step closer, his anxiety grew. He could now hear a large group of people inside the cave. They seemed to be singing or chanting in unison, accompanied by other solitary screams that hinted at extreme fear or torment. Despite being overtaken by fear, his curiosity was stronger. He crept to within just 3 meters of the cave's entrance. He hid behind a rock, hesitating to look inside, afraid someone might spot him. Finally, he gathered his courage, took a deep breath, and stepped out from behind the rock to approach the entrance, which was about 2.5 meters wide. He peeked inside, and what he saw froze him in terror. A primal survival instinct kicked in. Sebastián turned and ran from the cave at full speed, unsure if anyone had seen him, but feeling as if something or someone was chasing him. He ran like mad for about 16 kilometers until he reached the nearest police station, bursting in hysterically, drenched in sweat from fear. The officers were shocked by his appearance and tried to calm him down to understand what had happened. After calming down slightly, he tried to describe what he had seen, but words failed him. He was in a state of deep shock. Eventually, he managed to say he had seen something like vampires inside the cave. The officers were skeptical and doubted his story. They told him they would look into it if more reports came in, but for now, they would return him to his village. Sebastián was disheartened and kept begging them, saying something horrible was happening in the cave. People were being tortured or killed. Despite his pleas, the officers didn't take it seriously and escorted him back home. The next morning, Sebastián couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen. He returned to the police station, again begging them to go with him to the cave. This time, one officer, Luis Martínez, agreed to accompany him. Sebastián was thrilled that someone finally believed him, and the two set off toward the cave. Later that day, the other officers noticed that Luis and the boy hadn't returned. Luis hadn't contacted them via radio either. They tried calling him to no avail. The entire day passed with no word. Growing concerned, the officers went to Sebastián's village to ask about him. His family said he hadn't come home since morning. The police realized the situation had become critical. They contacted the Mexican military for help. A military unit was dispatched to join the search, and they all headed toward the cave late that night. And what they found inside was more horrifying and unbelievable than anyone could have imagined. To understand what was found inside that cave, we have to go back in time, specifically to December of 1962. In that month, two brothers named Santos and Caton Hernandez, who were con artists known for traveling between Mexican states to scam and rob people, decided to carry out their biggest deception yet. Their plan was to take over an entire village. They targeted a small, isolated village inhabited by illiterate and poor people. Their intention was to convince the villagers that they were prophets sent by the Inca gods. They promised the people that they would become wealthy if they obeyed and followed their instructions. They chose a village called La Orba Buena, located at the foot of the Sierra Madre Oriental mountain range, specifically below the cave that Luis and Sebastián would later explore. La Orba Buena was the perfect place for their scheme. It consisted of about 20 poor families, completely cut off from the outside world. As New Year's approached, the Hernandez brothers entered the village and put on a dramatic performance, proclaiming that they were prophets sent by the Inca gods. Thanks to their strong charisma and incredible ability to persuade, they successfully deceived the villagers, who believed their chance for prosperity had finally arrived. The villagers became their obedient followers, carrying out their every demand and offering them anything they asked for. However, after 2 months passed with no change in their condition, some villagers grew disillusioned, especially since the brothers were treating them with increasing cruelty. When murmurs of doubt began to spread among the roughly 70 villagers, the Hernandez brothers noticed and realized they were in danger. Instead of fleeing, they planned to regain the villagers' trust. They went to a nearby city and recruited a woman named Magdalena Solis, who, unfortunately, was a sex worker. They told her they were pretending to be prophets in a remote village, but the villagers were starting to doubt them. They asked her to join them and play the role of a living Inca goddess, in return for money. Magdalena agreed and joined the brothers, accompanied by her brother Eleazar, who had worked with her previously. The four returned to La Orba Buena. The brothers hid Magdalena inside the cave and dressed her in regal, godlike attire. Then, they summoned the villagers to the cave to witness a divine event. They created thick smoke at the back of the cave to enhance the illusion. When the moment arrived, Magdalena emerged from behind the smoke and declared herself to be the incarnate Inca goddess. She threatened them with death if they disobeyed. The trick worked perfectly. The villagers believed she was truly divine, and their faith in the brothers deepened. But then, something unexpected happened. Magdalena began to believe the lie herself. The reverent looks from the villagers, the overwhelming sense of power and control. It all convinced her that she was, in fact, a goddess. Instead of being a pawn in the brothers' plan, she became the one in control. The brothers became her followers. Over time, Magdalena used violence to maintain control. She ordered the villagers to serve her completely and began imposing blood rituals. She demanded blood offerings, and the villagers slaughtered their animals so she could drink their blood. But eventually, she claimed that animal blood was no longer enough. She needed human blood. In April, 2 villagers tried to escape after growing desperate from the brutality and oppression. But their plan was discovered, and the brothers reported it to Magdalena. She ordered the entire village to gather inside the cave, where she publicly killed the escapees, drinking their blood after hanging their bodies on poles inside the cave. That was the beginning of the human rituals. Every time the villagers were summoned to the cave, they didn't know who would be chosen next, until Magdalena pointed to them. The victim would be killed, and their blood would be consumed. Later, she began demanding that victims be hung alive, then had their chests cut open so she could drink their blood straight from their hearts. In May 1963, the 14-year-old boy Sebastián entered the cave and witnessed one of these rituals firsthand. He fled and reported what he saw to the police. The next day, he returned with Officer Luis Martinez, but Magdalena's followers captured them, and Magdalena sacrificed and drank their blood as part of the rituals. When the Mexican police and military finally arrived in La Yerba Buena, they found the village deserted. Magdalena had ordered everyone to hide inside the cave. A fierce battle broke out in the darkness of the cave. During the fight, the Hernandez brothers were killed. After the conflict ended, the authorities found blood-stained poles and scattered human remains inside the cave. Outside the cave, they discovered the bodies of Officer Luis and Sebastián inside a hut. Magdalena and her brother Eleazar were found inside and arrested. Investigators believe that Magdalena sacrificed and drank the blood of at least 15 people over the course of 6 weeks, but the only confirmed victims were the officer and the boy. Magdalena and Eleazar were sentenced to 50 years in prison, while the rest of the villagers who participated in the rituals or the battle received 30-year sentences. Shockingly, none of the villagers testified against Magdalena, despite being offered lighter sentences. It seemed their fear of the Inca goddess was stronger than their desire for freedom. As for Magdalena, she later died in prison, though the exact date of her death remains unknown. And so, we reach the end of our story. If you enjoyed this story and it caught your attention, don't forget to support us by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel, so you never miss any of our true and mysterious stories. Share this story with your friends. Someone out there might not have heard what happened in La Yerba Buena. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon with another story.